What if Ava Max had a 1960 Halloween hit? Find out on this week's What If, How, When, Why. Hello, my name is Morgan Brown, and for the past few months I've been making a series of videos that I call What If videos. The idea is that each week I take a different popular song and imagine an alternative universe in which a decision that someone's made or a different set of circumstances cause that song to come out completely different from the version that we know and love. I then take the isolated lead vocal from that track and record a new backing track to it using just GarageBand and whatever instruments I have to hand in order to bring that alternative version to life. So this week the song I chose was Sweet But Psycho by Ava Max, and I tried to convert that into a 1960 Halloween novelty song. If you haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, it sounds a little bit like this.
Make you curse, see you passing, she rip your shirt, within a second, you'll be coming back for seconds, with your play, you just can't help it, no, you'll play along, let her lead you on, if you say you no, then say you yes, 'cause she messing with your sweet but a psycho, little bit psycho, like she's screaming, run my.
Now I must admit, before starting this week's video, I didn't really know much about Ava Max at all. Obviously I'd heard the song Sweet But Psycho, it was all over the radio, couldn't really escape it in 2018 when it came out. So I was very familiar with that, and I'd also heard the song Kings and Queens, which was the other big single off that first album, but I wasn't too familiar with. My only perception of her really is of her as a singer kind of in the post-Lady Gaga mode. I've read that she doesn't really like that comparison, but I think it's pretty inevitable. There's definitely some touches in the song Sweet But Psycho which are clearly hinting at Lady Gaga. What I get from Ava Max, certainly with that first album, it was post-Gaga pop but with less arty pretensions than you get from Lady Gaga, which I think is fine. You know, not everything needs to be the kind of pop music that people write think pieces about. Sometimes pop music, you just want it to be pop music. And I remember seeing the video and a sort of striking asymmetrical haircut, kind of impressed that someone was bringing back the Phil Oakey haircut, if anyone remembers that from the Human League. Haven't seen that for a couple of decades, so that was pretty entertaining. But yeah, it's just a really kind of naggingly infectious song. Looking at some other stuff that she's done just in preparation for this, I see that, as far as I can gather, her second album from, I think, last year hasn't done as well, which is a shame because the bits I listened to, I quite enjoyed it. It's doing a bit more of the 80s synth pop thing that's quite in vogue now. I think doing it rather well, but doesn't seem to have caught on as well as those couple of big singles from the first album. I guess pop music isn't designed for me, so if I like it, maybe that's not a tremendous recommendation. But really, what brought me to this song was trying to think of some remotely horror or spooky kind of themed songs, or things that could be construed as spookily themed for Halloween, and this song sprang into my mind. Obviously, it's nothing really to do with the film or the book Psycho, but it got me to thinking, what if it was? How about if we cast this song back to the year that Alfred Hitchcock's film adaptation of Psycho came out, 1960? How would it have sounded then? Because it's not uncommon for a film that makes a big cultural impact to have spin-offs in other areas of culture. If you think to, like, when Star Wars was a massive smash, there were all kinds of things that span off from that, including people making pop songs that were obviously inspired by it. So you get things like A Spacer by Sheila B. Devotion, or I Lost My Heart to a Starship Trooper by Sarah Brightman and Hot Gossip, notably, but there were tons of other things too. So my thought was, maybe when Psycho comes out, it makes such an impact that people want to make spin-off pop singles from it. So I figured, in this alternative universe, young Ava Max, she's been trying to forge a music career throughout the mid to late 50s. It's not really been taking off, but she's there writing songs, trying to push them to publishers. And then there's a big furore about Psycho, and at the same time she's trying to promote this song that she's written about a girl who's attractive but also dangerous. And the publishers think, hang on a minute, Sweet But Psycho, we can link this in. So they seize on that and then promote her career using this song. Obviously, given the unsavory subject matter of the film, causes some controversy, so the song's banned, but as so often happens with banned songs, that only generates more publicity for it, so it becomes this big smash. So that was the idea that I was basing this on, 1960. It's kind of a bit of a forgotten age of pop, really. That spell between the first wave of rock and roll and then the start of Beatlemania. It's a strange time because from the mid-50s, the initial impact of rock and roll caused such an upheaval. But that momentum only carried it along for a couple of years, and then I guess Elvis joins the army. You get the tragic deaths of Buddy Holly and then Eddie Cochran. Chuck Berry's sidelined in prison. Little Richard gets religion. Even in the UK, your initial rock and rollers, Tommy Steele and Cliff Richard, both get shunted off into kind of light entertainment after a couple of years. So really, that momentum quickly dies away and the traditional music industry reasserts itself. So the Tin Pan Alley songwriters are very much back in force. I guess a couple of elements of rock and roll get taken on, so the hits that are coming through still have a little bit of a rock beat, a bit more of a backbeat than they would have had a little bit earlier, but it's very much back to kind of light entertainment, really. So there are singers who were around before rock and roll who kept going straight through that and who carry on. Your likes of Guy Mitchell, Al McCogan, Dickie Valentine, Frankie Lane, Connie Francis, the kind of teen idols who came up who were kind of like a sort of toned down Elvis as well. So Fabian, Bobby Rydell, people like that. It's all a kind of post rock and roll, very safe, Tin Pan Alley approved pop music that's coming through with a lot of novelty songs as well. So that's kind of what I was trying to create for this version of this Ava Max song. So it was immediately clear that the song was going to need a fairly extensive overhaul. The song as it exists in its proper version, it's very much in the mold of a lot of modern pop songs. It's just formed around a really simple 4-chord pattern that just repeats. Nothing wrong with that. A lot of pop songs do that really successfully nowadays, but that's not how it would have been done back in the Tin Pan Alley days. I don't know if you'll pick up my guitar on this mic, but I'll just try and demonstrate. The actual chord pattern of the song as it exists on the proper record, it's just a simple 4-1-5-6 progression. So and those are the only chords in the song. They just go round and round in the same sequence at the same pace all the way through. So I thought I can change that around, have a different sequence for each section of the song slightly, and also work in some jazzy kind of passing chords, diminished chords, that kind of thing, and some little hints of Latin stuff which would have been popular at the time. So my chorus pattern now goes. So quite a lot more elaborate, and then there are variations of that for the verse and for the bridge as well, all a little bit different. In terms of the instrumentation, I wanted to go for a sound that has some elements of a more rock-based kind of popular music in there. So we've still got a drum kit, we've got electric bass, we've got 2 electric guitars, but I didn't want them to be too rocky. So a lot of these records would have been played by session musicians, quite often jazz musicians who were just doing a day job to fund their more adventurous musical activities elsewhere. So I kind of wanted to get a bit of that feel in there too. So it's all pretty restrained, a couple of jazzy little lead guitar bits in there too, and nothing too rocking. And then on top of that band, put some piano. I'm not very good on the piano, but I just sort of pop that in, a little bit of texture, a few jazzy chords, nothing too fancy. And then we've got a string section. So I've got some more sustained romantic strings to give it a nice kind of saccharine feel, because I wanted to emphasize the sweet bit of the Sweet But Psycho for most of the song. But then we've also got the little quotes of the Bernard Herrmann Psycho theme there as well, just to kind of give that contrast. So I've got those in with the violin doubled by the piccolo as well for an extra kind of shrill feeling. But then throughout the rest of the song, these kind of nice sustained lines, and then a second pizzicato violin that plays a harmony line with the lead guitar, which I thought was quite a cute little melodic hook that would go well in a kind of early 60s, fairly twee pop song. And then there's a couple of other little decorative flourishes in there too. I added a bit of marimba in the bridge as well, which I thought was just another nice, easy listening element there too. So the whole thing is quite schmaltzy, late 50s, early 60s pop, but then just with this jarring kind of bit to give it that psycho element too. And then for the video, I wanted to do a similar thing, combining this prim, pretty, very middle of the road, late 50s, early 60s imagery with horror imagery. So a lot of the footage that I used there comes from a really, really sexist Xerox ad with a secretary basically saying, I can't type and I can't do filing and I can't do this, but I can press the button on the photocopier. And it's just this really stereotypical image of a ditzy early 60s secretary. And then I found another, I think it's public service film with someone playing the dream housewife role. So I thought I'd contrast those with bits of the famous Psycho shower scene, bits of Carnival of Souls, which is one of my favorite early 60s horror movies, and then stills from a bunch of other things. So Peeping Tom and Rosemary's Baby, and some more contemporary horror films too. There's a still from Audition in there, so really contrasting imagery just to match the contrast in the music. And I also crowbarred in some footage of Morticia and Lurch doing the twist from the Addams Family, because why not? So hopefully you've enjoyed what I've done with this. I think it's quite fun. I wanted to do something spooky but also kind of goofy for Halloween, and I think it ticks those boxes. So if you did enjoy it, please do let me know down in the comments, and also like, subscribe, always appreciate that, and check out my other videos too. I'll pop a little link down in the description. And if there's anything else that you'd like me to do, if any genres you'd like me to take on, any bands or artists you'd like me to have a go at, any musical styles you'd like me to try my hand at as well, do let me know. I'm always happy to have a go. I've got my first video based on viewer requests coming up in a couple of weeks' time, so watch out for that. And in the meantime, that's all from me for this week. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.